And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr, joined as always by Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you.
Bob, always great to see you.
Very, very serious topic now, Korea. From time to time, we see this bubble up. We see provocations from the north and angry rhetoric. But tell me if I'm wrong. This time it seems a little different.
It seems a little different. The bellicosity has always been there, as you know, Bob, but the North Koreans seem to be pushing closer and closer to the brink here, threatening to attack the United States directly, training missiles on the U.S. And the South Koreans, unlike the last couple of years, have declared that they're going to retaliate if they're hit. Recall in 2010, the islands that were shelled by the North Koreans, the South Koreans restrained themselves, didn't attack. Recall the sinking of the South Korean naval vessel, the Cheonyang. They did not retaliate after that, the death of sailors due to the North Korean sinking of that vessel. And so the South Koreans have declared they are going to retaliate if the North Koreans engage in some form of provocation. And so this brings the peninsula closer to war than I think any time we've seen in recent memory. And you've seen steps by the North Koreans symbolically to cut off the hotlines, daily statements and measures that indicate that they're moving a bit closer to that moment of brinksmanship. And the U.S. has indicated they are going to defend the South Koreans. We saw the B-2 bombers launched from Missouri as part of these exercises, dumped dummy bombs onto the South Korean bases to demonstrate that the U.S. has power and reach and is willing to use it. And so I think we're in a moment of tension here, and the potential for miscalculation is pretty high because communication is not very good between the North and the South.
That seems to me to be the key. So we send B-2 bombers and we send a B-52 across the peninsula there. That's a message. You know, don't mess with the South. We're there. We've got their back. But we're trying to send that message to somebody, this young leader who has no experience. And we have a very bad read on who he is and what he's doing.
No, I think that's right. And I think you have to keep in mind what their motivations are as well for this bellicosity. Much of this is for internal consumption. This is a young leader. This is a dynastic handover. Keep in mind that Kim Jong-un has only been in power a few months here. And so he's trying to consolidate his power with the military as well as the elite. And part of that is demonstrating strength. And that's been the explanation, I think, for the missile launches and other things. He also wants to demonstrate that in the face of international pressure, the sanctions that came from not just the U.S., but the UN and China, as well as South Korean, a little bit more forceful language from South Korea, that he is going to step up. He is going to be a forceful leader for the North Korean regime and people. And so part of this, you have to keep in mind, is for internal consumption and power consolidation.
Who's really in charge, though? Do we know? Do we have a good feel? Is it the military that's calling the shots over there, or is it this young leader? And which is more dangerous?
I don't think we know for sure, Bob, and I think that's part of the problem. It appears that Kim Jong-un has started to consolidate some of his power and found some of his voice. But recall that when he assumed power, there was a sense that he was being surrounded by older guard elements of the former regime and the military, if you will, viceroys who were helping him with the transition and with some of his decision making. And so you have to assume that there are those around him, in particular senior military leaders, that are whispering in his ear and have control over what is happening on the ground and some of the messaging coming from the North Korean military, which, as we've seen over the past 2 weeks, has been incredibly bellicose, threatening nuclear war on the U.S., which has forced the U.S. to move, for example, the 14 interceptors to Alaska to demonstrate that we're willing to defend ourselves.
So as we wrap this up, what's the U.S. play here? What do we do? Or do we just have to sit there and see how this plays out? And what's the risk that a mistake could happen here?
I think the real danger here is that one misstep could cause a domino effect here. And you have the South Koreans who've already committed themselves to reacting to some form of provocation. If the North decides they want to shell an island, a South Korean island, or take some provocative step, I would expect the South Koreans to respond. And what happens at that point is unclear. Does it escalate quickly? Is Seoul in danger at that point? Are our military bases in danger? This has the real potential of being a serious flashpoint based on one miscalculation. And so the U.S. wants to keep the temperature low, wants to demonstrate deterrence so as to warn the North Koreans not to take a misstep. And I think the North and the South have to find a way of communicating. One good sign, some of the commercial ventures that the North and South have underway are still open.
Still open.
So that's good.
Well, it's very, very frightening. I think we have to keep an eye on this one.
Very dangerous.
All right, Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you again next time.